All right, we're back with another podcast of Sports Card Nation. Episode 3, we're on here. We're 3 weeks in. Things are really headed in a positive direction. I'm very pleased with how the show's going. I'm happy to announce we're now on 9 platforms. 9 platforms you can catch the podcast. We're on Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Castbox, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Anchor, and I'm happy to announce today we were officially picked up by Apple Podcasts and iTunes. You can find the show now on iTunes. So things are going very well for the program. We hope you enjoy it. We did get some new equipment. While we're talking about that, I want to announce at this point we're going to have our first interview on the show in episode 4. That's going to be Clay Plogger, on Instagram, known as the PSA guy. Clay's Cards. He does a lot of the submissions for everyone, including yours truly right here, to PSA. $10 a card, 45-day service, and you really can't beat that. He cleans them, cracks them, cleans them, inspects them for you, gives you his assessment, and he's got quite the reputation for knowing what he's doing and getting great results. I know that's what made me do my submissions with him. He just came highly recommended, and I was always seeing posts, go with Clay. He's the man. He knows what he's doing. He gets the highest grades possible. So we're going to have him on the program next week. He has the distinction of being the first of what we hope is a line of guest interviews from people in the hobby. We're in the process of getting more and continuing that. But I'm excited to talk to him, learn a little bit what he does, ask him some questions, and have him on the show. So stay tuned for that. That'll be probably next Friday. That episode 4 will drop. And once again, we're on 9 platforms now, including Apple iTunes. So really good things. We're moving in a positive direction. I even got a few more pieces of equipment coming in too. So we're not done. We're moving forward. We're making the show better, and that's what it's about. While we're on that, I want to talk about 2 things in the hobby, 2 topics. Weigh my 2 cents in, if you will. They're not new. They're not really new topics. You've heard about them before, but the Beckett Graded versus PSA grading, and 101 cards that don't hold that same weight like they used to, and we're going to weigh in, or I'm going to weigh in on both of those topics. Let's start with the Beckett Graded versus PSA Graded. Now, there are other grading companies, for the record, as most of us know. SGC, a lot of small kind of mom and pop ones, GMA, which, I'll be honest with you, is terrible. It's just, to me, just a way to get you want your card in a slab, but other than that, the grading itself doesn't enhance the card at all. They're not taken seriously. But we all know the big 2, Beckett Grading and PSA, Professional Sports Authenticators. It's the 2 most widely recognized. I can speak for myself. As someone who buys and sells, sometimes trades, I look at them as the big 2. I like them both. Okay. And truthfully, they're the only 2 I really recognize. I don't look at it as any of those other fringe grading places as legitimate. So for me, it's PSA or Beckett. I think the slabs are nicer. The cards do look nicer in the Beckett slabs. You get the subgrades. I'm not a big stickler for the subgrades like a lot of people are. I know a lot of people have to have them, or they really, like them more than others. I like them, don't get me wrong. but I'm fine with PSA, whether it's a 9 or 10 or whatever they grade it at. I'm subgrades, I guess what I'm saying is not a deal breaker for me. Either or. I think the Beckett slabs are nicer. The cards seem to look nicer, but PSA recently redid their slabbing process as well. So I think they've kind of closed the gap, if there's even a gap between these two companies anymore. I don't know if there is. I know at one point it was my perception that Beckett had the lead in this competition, and I think some recent events, in my opinion, have kind of closed that gap or even made that gap non-existent. I think recently PSA has really taken kind of the lead in the grading card market. Speaking with Beckett, they recently, and I believe it was June, did away or suspended their 10-day guaranteed turnaround service. The other issue they're having, and this isn't just with Beckett, PSA has similar issues, but the guaranteed times were not being honored or would be later. But Beckett's, at one point, I remember, they even said their non-guaranteed service was going to be a minimum of 11-month wait. So imagine you submit your cards in January, you might be lucky to have those submissions back by Christmas. And I don't know, that seems like a long time. And here's my thing. You're that busy, Beckett. Hey, that's a good problem to have. Anyone in business knows we can't keep up with the orders, with the demand. Well, what do? You hire more staff. I just, I'm sure they did hire some new graders, but hire enough graders where maybe you can keep these turnaround times realistic. 11 months seems like a long time, even for a non-guaranteed level. If I'm a company that does that, I don't know if I want to be in possession of someone's cards for an 11th month period. Just more opportunities for things to go wrong, stuff to be misplaced, damaged, done wrong, that sort of thing. And, I would want to get those, provide the best customer service, even at a non-guaranteed level, get those cards back into those customers' hands with the grades, as soon as possible. And, I hate to use the word cheap, but I got the impression, and I've submitted with, full disclosure, I've submitted with both companies. I've submitted with Beckett Graded, and I've submitted with PSA, both directly through other people, and so I'm familiar with the process. And 11 months is just, to me, too long, even on a non-guaranteed level. And PSA seems to, while Beckett was kind of struggling with that and getting a perception of being cheap and not hiring enough graders and making bad decisions, like eliminating or suspending the 10-day guaranteed level. PSA kind of jumped on that opportunity. That door opened, and to me, I felt like they took advantage of that, and they, now don't get me wrong, they weren't exactly on time either, but their wait times were a lot less, and it became pretty known to that fact. I think I know a lot of people who were ardent, Beckett grading supporters. I'd never, go through PSA. Those kind of people. I've seen some of those people, kind of do a 180 and change that tune and say the opposite now. So, yeah, I think that that's closed, closed or not as wide as it was. That's for darn sure. So, me personally, I like them both. I think Beckett kind of dropped the ball this year with some decisions, not hiring enough staff. The wait time, was kind of front page news and spread like wildfire that they're way behind, and it really hurt the perception of them. And I think it made people look at PSA a little bit more. And then, like I said, PSA went with the new slabs, which, that was always kind of the knock on PSA. Their slabs are not great, or compared to Beckett, they're not even close. And I still give the edge to Beckett when it comes to the slab itself. But the new PSA slabs are better. They got that hologram authentication. So I think they've made improvements, and I think that's where I'm going with this. I think this last few months, 4 or 5 months, I think PSA's made improvements, and I think kind of Beckett Grading kind of went in the opposite direction and trending the other way. So I see a lot more people submitting with PSA. They just don't want to wait that long, and they recognize both as reputable graders when it comes to the sports card grading market. And I think a lot of people are probably like me, in I'm fine with both. I recognize both. I use both. I have cards that are graded by both. So to me, they're the, hey, maybe not the best analogy, but I think they're the Burger King and McDonald's of the sports card grading industry. So I guess it's pick your poison. But that's my 2 cents on that. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the one of one conundrum, and it's not really a conundrum. I mean, let's be honest. We open anything, or we're in a break. I mean, and we either pull or get a 1 or 1 pulled. I mean, we're ecstatic through the roof. A 1-on-1 is exactly what it sounds like. It's the only version of that card, and I know if I buy into a break myself, or I open any product, the chances of hitting 1s or 1s, obviously we know, are few and far between. So when you do, it's a great feeling, especially when it's a really good player on top of that. But I think recently, the kind of the luster, the bloom is a little bit off that 1 of 1 rose. And I kind of want to talk about that. When you think about it, it's still a 1 of 1. It's the only version of that card. If you have a 1 of 1 Machado, a Machado collector, would love to acquire that card. You have possession of it. You have some leverage there. Maybe they, I hate to say it like that, but maybe they're willing to overpay to get that in their collection and whatnot. But the luster, I think, recently has kind of come off this. And I thought, I was thinking to myself, well, why is that? I think it's not really one reason in particular. I think it's a multitude of things. I think one of them, let's, be honest, is just there's so many products now, so many releases in the 20s of each sport. You even got Panini, who's not licensed by Major League Baseball. They're licensed by the Players Association, and they're putting out almost 20 products of baseball. So there's, and that's just baseball. You get, you got your basketball releases, your football, your other, sports. There's just way more 1-on-1s on the market than years before. And it's supply and demand. There's just so many 1-on-1s now compared to years past that it's, you still love to pull them, but it just doesn't have that same, awe effect as I think it once did. So I think the gluttony of products has kind of dampened a little bit the 1-on-1s. Then you got these printing plates. And now I still like a 1-on-1 printing plate, but there's some people in the hobby that don't even consider them a true 1-on-1. It's being a printing plate. And a lot of times they'll say, well, there's really 4 printing plates with the different colors. The printing plates seem to be easier to get a lot of times, or you see them more frequently. The other thing with the printing plates is, as we know, a lot of times because they're actually used in the process of producing the cards, they kind of come out, when you pull one, they kind of come out with some fringe damage already. Now I look at that and say, well, if you do pull one and it really kind of is in really nice shape, grade that thing, because to me it's going to have a printing plate's going to have a premium if it pulls a high grade. So I mean, there's two sides to that coin, but I think the printing plate 101s kind of have kind of watered down the market, if you will, a little bit, taking a little bit of the bloom off the rose. You got these sketch cards too, 101s. There's a lot more different 1s. There's a lot more different product, and while pulling a 101's great, I love to do it. That's kind of what you're hoping for. It just doesn't seem to be held in the same regard as in years past. So I think that's why. I think it's like I said, it's a combination of things. A lot more product, a lot more releases, a lot more opportunities to pull 101s, a lot more 101s in general because there are a lot more releases, and then some of these other kind of fringe recognized 101s from printing plates, sketch cards, and a lot of people, don't even really consider them true 101s, and that's probably a debate for another day. So those are my takes on two, debates, if you will, in the hobby. I don't know if you agree, disagree. Let us know. Give us your feedback. Do you have a different view on it? A different take? Let us know. All right, let's do our weekly product release schedule as we do each episode. December 5th is 2018 Bowman Draft Baseball. Same day, 2018 Panini Obsidian Football. Also same day, 2018-19 Panini Revolution Basketball. Staying on December 5th, 2018-19 Panini Treble Soccer. Also staying on that fifth trend, the 2018 Topps Dynasty Baseball, and I've seen some pics of that. That looks really, really sharp. I mean, it is Topps Dynasty, so it's a high-end product, but this year's release really, really looks nice and clean. Same day, 2018 Topps Legends of WWE Wrestling. I'll go through 5 releases that are going to be on December 12th, all December 12th. 2018 Panini Elite Extra Edition Baseball, Panini Playbook Football, 2018 Topps Star Wars Galaxy, 2018 Topps Star Wars Stellar Signatures, and 2018 Rittenhouse Star Trek Enterprise Archives Series 1. So we got a lot of releases coming up December. You put them on your Christmas list. A lot of product, even though it's late in the year, there's a lot of great product still released. Even some of the off-season stuff is still very nice. So there you go. All right, let's head to the sports world and talk about some news there, or speculation more than news. Let's go right to Major League Baseball. Like everyone else, I'm wondering, where does Bryce Harper wind up? I'm a baseball fan. I'm a Mets fan. The recent news had him, purchasing or leasing an apartment in Long Island City, in a complex famous for where Mets live and a few Yankees. So the speculation, the whispers were, he might sign with the Mets or the Yankees. He's New York City area. I'll be honest with you. I hope he signs. I'd love to have him on the Mets. I know he didn't have a great year. He's probably gonna command. You're looking at a guy that's going to command a 10-year contract and over $300 million. I mean, that's what he turned down from the Nationals and walked away. And I said, obviously the podcast wasn't in existence yet, but the conversations I had with fellow baseball fans, I thought the Nationals should have traded him before the deadline. I always got the impression, as a lot of people did, that there really wasn't any chance that he stays in Washington. And if you're the Nationals front office, I think they had to. I'd be shocked if they didn't know that was coming and tried to move him. And maybe they did. I did hear a report that they had a deal in place, but they didn't pull the trigger. But now I think he's going to walk away from that ball club. They're going to get nothing out of it, and they could have got a prospect package had they dealt him before the deadline during the season. So I think Washington's going to be in trouble. Not that one man makes the team, but he is a big part of what they do. If he goes to the Mets and stays in division, that would be really interesting, especially being a Met fan. And that might, if something like that was to occur, it would make me think that he's got some animosity towards the Nationals, and that's his way of kind of, saying screw you. I'm going to beat you, on a regular basis. So it'll be interesting to see where he winds up. I do not think it's going to be the Mets or the Yankees even. I know the Yankees will overpay, and reports are they are interested in him. He fills a need, but I don't see him going there. I know he's very close with Chris Bryant with the Cubs. I don't see that as a potential landing spot. They just don't have. I don't want to say they don't have the money, but they're already, their payroll is pretty high, and for them to get Harper, I think they'd have to move a piece or two, and I don't know if they want to do that. I've even heard Chris Bryant's name be mentioned during the winter meetings as being potentially traded. So I think if they were interested in bringing Harper to Chicago, I don't think you'd hear whispers that Bryant's potentially trade bait. So I don't buy the Cubs as a potential landing spot. I think one of the favorites to land Harper is one we've heard early on in the process. That's the Philadelphia Phillies. They've got a ton of money to spend. They even kind of released a statement saying we've got plenty of money to spend, or even overspend. They even used the quote overspend. So they're a team that can throw a boatload of money at Bryce Harper, probably more than what he's worth, and it's really just a matter of whether that's a destination he wants to play in. I've heard the White Sox. I don't really see that. Not so much because the money, they can afford it too. I just don't see him wanting to play on that team. So I think it's really the Phillies, and I think there's a dark horse team that people are starting to mention now, but not early on in the process, and that's the Los Angeles Dodgers. I got a feeling Machado's not going to stay there, so they're going to have payroll to spend. I know the Dodgers were one of the teams that did try to acquire Bryce before the trade deadline. They obviously were unable to do that, and now they could get an opportunity to get him now without even having to give up any of those prospects. I heard that the Dodgers and the Nationals did talk potential deal. The Nationals wanted Walker Buehler and a few other prospects in the deal, and the Dodgers kind of hesitated, and obviously nothing came to fruition. Now the Dodgers have an opportunity to to sign him potentially without them losing any prospects and adding them to the existing roster. And I think they're definitely going to be overtures to try to do that. I don't see, some places are saying, well, maybe they can get Machado, keep Machado and get Harper. I don't see that as a possibility. I think it's going to be one or the other. If the Dodgers sign Machado first, I don't see Harper going. If Machado signs somewhere else before Harper signs somewhere, I think then those talks will heat up. It's interesting. There may be even a team I didn't mention that we're not thinking about. But to me, if I'm placing bets, those would be my top two. Would be the Phillies and the Dodgers. Some people are really still feeling like the Cubs are in that mix. I'm gonna not be one of those guys. I don't think he winds up in Chicago. I know the whole Chris Bryant and him are buddies story. Well, not a story, but I know the backstory. I don't think that's going to be enough where that winds up coming to fruition. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes, what he's paid, and what kind of impact that has on where he goes. And not only playing-wise, but, he's going to sign for one of the largest contracts in baseball history. Depending on what team it is, it's really kind of going to handcuff them to what else they can do. So if it's the Dodgers, for example, it's not going to be as big of a deal because they're already that cupboard's pretty stocked to begin with, and then you add in Harper to that. If it's a little bit of a lesser team that needs more than just Harper, I think signing Harper, could handcuff them to where they can't fill in all their holes. So we'll have to see where this ball stops rolling, where he decides to sign, for how much, what team that is, how that roster looks, and what else that team potentially can do. So we'll just have to wait and see like everybody else. The other thing I want to talk about on the episode today is the BCS standings in college football. This week the top four the top three remained unchanged. Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame. Michigan got waxed by Ohio State. I watched that game. It was brutal. And Jim Harbaugh just can't get over that hump of beating those rival schools. Me and my son had a debate. He thinks, Jim Harbaugh might get fired or could potentially be on the hot seat. I disagree with him, even though, he got beat in that fashion by Ohio State, the track record of not being able to beat them teams. I mean, when you look at their record this year, and other than that Ohio State game, they've had a great year. I don't know how you fire a guy like that. I mean, I told my son that, the only thing I could see there would be, he both parties kind of have a meeting and agree to part ways. Maybe he goes back to the NFL, either as a coordinator or gets, I think there's going to be 8 to 10 positions available in the NFL. So maybe he grabs one of those and, says, hey, I did all I could do at my alma mater. I enjoyed my time. I'm going to leave, the program in a better state when I left for the next guy than it was left for me when I took it. That I could see that sort of scenario occurring. I don't see, Michigan just outright firing them. I'd be shocked by that. Stranger sports, so stranger things happen, but I don't see a firing. I see, if anything, worst case scenario, I see a mutual parting of ways rather than a firing. They just kind of release a statement that they both sat down and that they agreed to part ways, and he takes an NFL job again. I don't think if he does that, I don't see him doing that to go to a different college, especially knowing what Michigan means to him, being his alma mater and that sort of thing. So Michigan's not in that top 4 playoff anymore. And I'll be honest with you, the fact that they only dropped down to 7th was shocking. If it was me doing the rankings, I would have had them at 8, 9, or 10, and probably closer to the 10 than the 8. Ohio State, after beating Michigan handily, moved up to 6 now. They're sort of still on the outside looking in. Now Georgia does play Alabama in the conference title game. Alabama heavy favorite. Most people expect Georgia to lose, and they won't. If that happens, they won't be in the 4th spot anymore. And it'll be interesting to see, can Ohio State jump over Oklahoma, who's also in their championship conference game against Texas. So if Oklahoma, to me, wins handedly, they probably maintain that 4th spot, assuming Georgia loses. If Oklahoma struggles and their defense is not great and either loses to Texas or wins a very close game, and Ohio State, beats Northwestern handily, then I can see a scenario as crazy as it, didn't look like that a couple weeks ago. Looked like Ohio State was dead in the water. But if, like I said, Oklahoma struggles or loses, Ohio State wins handily, Georgia loses to Alabama as they're expected to, there's a scenario where Ohio State can break this thing up and squeeze into that 3rd or 4th spot and get into the playoffs. And let's be honest, with Haskins at quarterback, pretty dynamic. Their defense is starting to play a little bit better. They might surprise. Getting in there is half the battle. They could play upset to somebody and maybe match up with Alabama. And Alabama, I'll be honest with you, as a team, I don't see anyone beating. I mean, if I'm betting my house, if you gave me Alabama or the field, I'd probably still take Alabama. They're not the traditional Alabama. Alabama's always known for having a great defense and kind of just a manageable offense that will score enough points and the defense will do the rest. And now you got Tua leading that offense as one of the most high-scoring offenses in the nation. And that's crazy to think when you add it to that defense. They almost look like world beaters, so they're my pick to win the whole thing. I think some of the rest might be semantics of who gets in, but it's still interesting nonetheless. Let's talk a little bit about UCF. They'll tell you their fan base and their program. They're claiming last year as a national championship season. They got they made their own rings. They made their own kind of trophy. I think that's ridiculous. I mean, no one outside that program recognizes the championship they're claiming. Here we are again. They're now number 8. I don't see any scenario, even no matter what happens in front of them with the 7 teams in front of them, I don't see any scenario where UCF gets into that playoff. Just their strength of schedule is just too weak. Their biggest game is a Cincinnati team, and Cincinnati's no slouch. Don't get me wrong, but you're talking about a number 23, number 24th ranked team in the country. That's their most difficult game on the schedule, and with all due respect to that program, and let's be honest with you, they're on pace for their 2nd undefeated season in a row. But with that schedule, I just can't reward that in my mind with a playoff berth. So I think they're on the outside looking in again. What I would say to them, play a tougher out of conference schedule or try to get into a Power 5 conference. But playing the schedule you do, you to me is not worthy of one of those 4 playoff spots. Now if they expand to 8 teams make the playoff, they'd be almost in right now. Actually, they would be. They're 8th in the playoff seeding. So if they expand to 8th, they'd have the ability to prove, they belong and what they would do. Now, I'll be honest with you. If the playoffs were 8 teams today, this year, I don't see them doing much damage. Look like they'd play Alabama right off the bat, and to me, they get killed. So I think they like to consider themselves one of the big boys. I don't see it from them, And going down the rest of the list, I mean, if you're past that point, Michigan to me is very fortunate even to still be ranked 7th after that performance. It was nothing short of terrible. Florida's looking better, but it's too late for them. That they're at 3-loss team is not gonna get in. No doubt about it. No matter what happens the rest of the way. So we'll see. From a personal standpoint, I'm in the Syracuse area. So Syracuse University, the Orange had a huge year. Finished 9-3. Going to a bowl. Looks like the leading contenders is the Camping World Bowl, maybe against either Texas or West Virginia or potentially Iowa State. So it's a good year here locally for a team that's traditionally not known, for being a football powerhouse lately. So the question even there is with the coach, Dino Babers. We got him from Bowling Green. Is now I see a lot of those bigger schools that are going to have openings reach out, maybe try to get them. So Syracuse is going to have to pony up some money to keep them. Traditionally, they don't like to do that. They're actually famous for kind of being a little cheap when it comes to coaches' payroll, including Jim Boeheim's. So it'd be interesting to see whether we can keep Babers and whether he stays. If I'm betting, I think he does stay. I think Syracuse gives him a raise. How much, I don't know, but I think they do the right things. They keep him here at least a couple more years to keep progressing on really what he's built. I mean, he came in here to a program that was in shambles and has really resurrected this thing. So I hope we keep him. You don't think about this when Mac Brown just took the North Carolina job. But other coaches are going to get fired. Positions are going to open up. Paul Johnson just retired from Georgia Tech, so someone's going to get poached from another program. It's kind of going to be a domino effect. So there's going to be some openings at these bigger schools, and some of them are going to call Coach Babers and other coaches. So it's going to be a little bit of a coaching carousel in the off season for college, and I think in the NFL too. I think there's going to be 8 to 10 job openings in the NFL. So it'll be interesting to see where all these coaches wind up when the dust settles and the music stops. I'm a huge football guy, so that's very interesting to me. All right, let's talk about a little segment we always do here, or we try to do every week. I think I might have missed 1 week when it came to this. Is what I call the best bets. I like to pick 3 games. It's football season, so I like to try to pick at least one college game and a couple NFL. I'm not going to call them locks. I'm not that good, but I do know a little something. So I call it best bets. I think we've done this once 1 week before. 3 games, I went 2-1. Not going to retire off my picks, so we can't call them locks. But we'll call them best bets. Again, I got 3 games, all football on this week's episode. 1 college, 2 pro. And I know we talked about them earlier. Let's go to the college game first. I talked about scenarios where Ohio State can kind of sneak in, get one of those 4 playoff berths and see what they can do. I don't think it's going to happen. They're playing Northwestern. They're 10-point favorites. I think Ohio State wins the game. I don't know if they cover the spread. Maybe I'm crazy after what they just did, dismantling Michigan in the fashion they did. Again, that was at home too. But Northwestern, Coach Fitzgerald always has these teams prepared. They win games they shouldn't. They're in games closer than they probably should be. I think Pat Fitzgerald's one of the best coaches in the country. He's at his alma mater. He probably gets calls to bigger schools, bigger programs that would love to poach him from Northwestern, but that's his alma mater. So he's remained there. And I don't know. I see this game. I don't see Northwestern winning. You never know. They're capable. That's how good of a coach Fitzgerald is to me. But I somehow see them covering that 10-point spread. Ohio State may win, but this game might be closer than people think. So as crazy as it sounds, I'm going to take Northwestern and the points. You give me a 10-0 head start with that kind of team. They have a pretty good defense. I'm going to take a flyer on Northwestern. Like I said, don't bet the house, but bet the guest house maybe. Okay, the two NFL games I'm looking at with the spreads this week. I like the college game. I took an underdog. The two pro games I like two favorites. And let's go to the Denver Cincinnati game. Denver is a 4.5 point favorite over the Bengals. I just watched them beat my Steelers. We kind of gacked that up ourselves with 4 turnovers, but I was a little more impressed with Denver after watching them play than I was not seeing them play before the Steeler game. And they're only 4.5 point favorites. You got a Bengals team that has AJ Green just coming back, so he may be a little rusty, maybe a little limited, and you've got no Andy Dalton. Not that Andy Dalton's Dan Marino, but Andy Dalton is their starting quarterback. And now you got the legend of Jeff Driscoll. And I don't see that Bengals team led by Jeff Driscoll being competitive. So a 4.5 point spread by favorite in Denver. I'm taking that all day. Denver. That's one I might bet my house on. So I'm taking Denver. I'll take Denver. Give the Bengals the points. I think that's a potential double-digit victory for the Broncos. And the last game I'm going to talk about, another favorite, is the Seahawks, Seattle, minus 10 over the San Francisco 49ers. So the Seahawks favored by 10. I'm going to take the Seahawks. I know the Mullins story. Great story. Good kid, real humble. God-fearing guy, emotional. But it's a great story. Doesn't make him a great quarterback. I think Seattle's still in the playoff mix, and they know it. They need to win, and I think they're gonna be, foot on the pedal. And again, I know it's a double-digit point spread, and I'll be honest with you, usually those scare me. I try to stay away from them. It's kind of a risky thing. You're giving that other team double digits before the game even starts. But I see this game kind of being like a 31-7, 31-14 type game. If that's the case, you're looking at 17, 24-point differential. I think the 10 points should be an easy cover. I'm taking Seattle and the 10 points. So I'm taking this week on the best bets. I'm taking Seattle by 10, at least 10, over the 49ers. Denver by 4.5 or more over the Bengals. And I'm taking an underdog in college, Northwestern, as crazy as it might sound, plus 10 over Ohio State. So there's my three picks of the week, if you will. We'll reconvene next week and see how I did. All right, I'd like to talk about some things coming down the turnpike for the show. But before I do that, I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone out there that's listening to the program, who have subscribed to it. This week has went beyond expectations already of what I had for the show in basically week 3. Our listens are way up, our subscribers are way up, and I want to say thank you. I'm humbled by it. I appreciate the time that you may take to listen to me and some of my opinions. if you have feedback, I want to hear it. Tell me what you want to hear on the show, what you want to see us do. I haven't yet given out any kind of ways to reach us. They're on any kind of the platforms that we're on, but I want to take this moment to point them out. So you can follow us at Instagram at Sports Card Nation Podcast, all one word. Sports Card Nation Podcast, all one big one word. We're on Twitter and that's at Sports Card Natty 1. So it's Sports Card NATI 1. That's our Twitter address. And we're on Facebook in a group. We're the Sports Card Nation Podcast, and there is spaces in that one. So sports is one word, card is the second word, nation, third word, and fourth word is podcast. So we'd love to have you follow us on any of those platforms. Let me give out our email address as well. It's sportscardnationpc, all one word, at gmail.com. Once again, that's sportscardnationpc at gmail.com. PC short for podcast. So give us any feedback, what you like, what you don't like, what you don't want to see anymore, what you do want to see. I'll respond to any inquiries. I also want to talk about some things coming up for the show. As I announced earlier on the show, I'm very pleased to have in episode 4 we're going to do our first interview during the podcast, and that's going to be Clay Plogger, PSA guy, as he's known on Instagram, and we're going to have a discussion about kind of what we talked about today, PSA versus BGS. Obviously, he's a PSA guy. I'm going to ask him why that is, how he kind of got started doing what he does, and I'll ask some offbeat questions too. Maybe I'll ask him, what's the weirdest card anyone's ever submitted through him. I won't ask him to throw anyone under the bus or mention names, but maybe mention the card, and we'll talk about a little bit of the process he goes through before he sends those cards to PSA, how long it takes, how time consuming, and what he actually does, and maybe tips he can give to you listening, to what to do and whatnot. So I'm looking forward to that interview. I also just posted tonight on social media, we're doing a major giveaway in support of the show. We're going to give away a Jason Tatum Select Prism Scope Parallel Beckett Graded 9.5 Gem Mint rookie, valued anywhere from $60 to $100. You know how eBay closed sales work. So, average $60 to $100. Someone's going to win that free. There's going to be multiple ways to get multiple entries. I'll be posting some details by the time this podcast posts, it'll probably already be underway. It'll probably be something where, subscribe to us on any of our social media platforms, get you an entry. If you post a shout out or tag us kind of thing, I'll give you another entry. So there'll be 2 to 3 ways for someone to get an entry to win that Tatum Gem Mint parallel rookie. So nice opportunity to win something free. The other thing I want to announce too is I'm not sure what week we're officially going to start doing it, but I am going to give away cards each week on the show. And how I foresee doing that is this. I'll announce or I'll post on social media what that card prize is going to be for that show. I'm going to give a keyword at some point during the episode, during the podcast. Not at the same spot every week. That way, people could cherry pick it. But at some random spot, I'm going to literally stop in the middle of something and say the keyword is this, and then anyone that emails or posts the keyword back to us will be entered in to win that week's card prize. So it's something to give back each week, get you to listen, to be honest with you, and good opportunity to win some free cards. So something I want to incorporate each and every week. I've already started to stack a pile of cards up and put some stuff together. So look forward to that as well. Once again, I sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, want to thank you for listening to the program. It's something we're going to try to continue to do, and like I've said already before in previous podcast episode, we want to get better with the show, do more things, bring more stuff to the table. So I hope you're with us on this ride. I appreciate you being here. Thank you. Have a great, safe, and happy holiday season, and we'll see you in a week.